Batting cleanup, a young lady that can certainly handle the job, Jessica Hughes. She grew up in Pine Barrens of coastal southern New Jersey and studied literature at Rutgers University. She moved to East Texas in search of a more freedom-minded state. I think she found it. She writes a blog on the topic of defense of personal liberty and self-determination. Jessica is married to United States Army and Air Force veteran and is the homeschooling mother of 3 brilliant children. Ms. Hughes will be speaking on the rule of law.
Thomas Jefferson said, "In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." When Jefferson spoke these words, he was referring to what was truly miraculous about the United States of America. We were going to be a country run not on the promises of our politicians, but by the rule of law. These chains that Jefferson spoke of would hold in check the force of the government, a force that our founders recognized was a necessary but very dangerous evil. Now, under the Constitution, the federal government had very little power to affect your day-to-day life. They couldn't do you any personal good. They couldn't come pay your mortgage for you. But they couldn't do you much bad either. They couldn't come and take your money to pay somebody else's mortgage. This is an essential restraint. How many of you here have ever felt like some distant bureaucrat in Washington even knows what is best for you, let alone wants to do it? Now, for generations after our founding, the Supreme Court, they agreed that the power of Congress to tax us would be limited to paying for a very few duties that they had that were spelled out in that contract. But then came the 30s. And when we had the Depression and there was a crisis all around us and the government stood up and said, we need to do something, we've got to do something now. And it was a panic in the country. And I think that sounds a little familiar right now. So what they decided to do was they would loosen the chains and they would set up a system where we were now governed by men and not laws. Men who were supposed to be equal to us would now have the power to take whatever portion of the people's money they saw fit and spend it however they chose. This is the path of a tyrant. The tyrant tells you that you must give up some liberty so that he can take care of something that needs to be done. But the problem is, we as a people have bought that argument, and that makes us slaves. We are enslaved by shackles that we bought and paid for with our own tax money through the years. Instead of being united in protecting ourselves from the encroachment and the tyranny of our federal government, we've lined up and fought each other over whose out-of-control party is the best. We have been taxed to death, and we've been arguing over what parties will promise us, instead of recognizing that everything they promise you is buying your vote with your own money. Now, we put up with it for a long time, but now they are buying banks with our money. That's right, foreign banks, yes. This is an insult to the American people. Our own elected leaders have done what those banks and those failing corporations could never have done on their own. They have looted the wealth of this country and handed over our bounty to a bunch of cronies that they were bought and paid for by. What I really want you to understand today is that this could never have happened under the rule of law our founders fought so hard to give us. That's right. It was the lawless self-interest of Washington that created this crisis. But do they come out and admit their mistakes? No, they point at banks and they point at CEOs and greedy Wall Street people and they say, oh, pay no attention to the politician behind the curtain, the one up to his eyeballs in campaign contributions. No, what is their answer? It is more power over more of our money. Well, it is time to stand up, America. Not for your party, but for your liberty. We need to recognize that the noble Robin Hood we thought we let loose about a century ago has become a beast that is not content to nibble at a little of the rich's money so he can feed the poor. He is ravenous to devour your liberty and mine. Now, whatever the cost is of returning Washington to its proper limited role, the cost of trading our constitutional protections for the promises of politicians is much, much higher. And if we don't keep this momentum going and demand the return of our constitutional republic, the outrageous taxation and this obscene debt that we're saddling our children with, that may be the least of our problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
God bless the Republic.
Amen. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone once more for turning out for this event. And I want to say that I underestimated the crowd a little bit. Of course, I overestimated it too. It's not quite 1 million. But there are two professionals here that do crowd estimates, and there's 2,000 roughly, more or less.